Hey everybody, Breakthrough Health and Life Coach Glenn Hattem here. I'm here with my good friend Gary Smith. Say hi to everybody, Gary.
Hey everyone.
All right, mic check. We are working. Just want to let everybody know today, I was very fortunate to be on Gary's podcast a while back, and we had such an incredible conversation around purpose, something we're both very passionate about in our work with our clients, and it's just, it's on the loudspeaker all the time in our lives too. So I thought today's conversation might be, I don't know if we'll call it part two, but we'll see. We'll say, next dimension of purpose and what's possible there. Because the way we like to do things here is just get raw and real and just roll with what's coming off the cuff. And so maybe today, before we start talking about purpose, why should we be talking about purpose? Maybe tell everybody, Gary, a little bit about yourself and what you're up to in the world these days.
Okay, well, I've had my own business as a coach and business consultant for, next week will be 24 years. So it's been a fun ride. But the whole thing with purpose with me has been sort of an evolution. I started out as a business consultant, and then the more I got into things, the more I sort of shifted from business consulting into the coaching arena to try and help people out, because so much of the times companies would call me up and I would go in to work with them, and I thought it was going to be either technical or logistics problems that we were going to be dealing with, and it turned out that the real root of the problems was people problems. And so I started working with them, and then that sort of spilled over into the arena of working individually with people. And a lot of times people would be struggling to achieve their goals and that sort of thing. And as I sat down and began working with them, I realized that a lot of what was holding them back was lack of purpose. They really didn't know why they were doing what they were doing. They had picked up from society saying, hey, this is what you need to do if you want to be successful, or they were having views imposed on them by other people about what they needed to do and how they needed to live their lives. And so I started focusing them in on saying, okay, well, what is it that you really want to do? And what is it that you want your life to count for? And let's start building a life and a future around that. And it's been a blast. I get out of bed every morning when my feet hit the floor. I'm excited to go and have fun.
So you sound like you get to live in the arena with folks where they're being, in a certain sense, giving permission to themselves to be great and to go for it, to go all in on their unique viewpoint, and to cast aside things that they maybe been impregnated with, over years. And there's a certain degree of freedom and playfulness that's in the work that you get to do with people.
Yeah, it is. I mean, back when I became a consultant, one of the first books I read was by a fellow who was a business professor at Stanford University in California. And in the first paragraph of the first chapter of his book, he said, if you're going to be a successful consultant, coach, whatever you want to call it, the first thing that has to happen is that your work has to become your play, because then and only then will you do what's required to be successful at what you do. And so I've really focused on that, and my work is my play, which is why I'm almost 70 years old, and I have no desire to retire. I'm just going to keep on keeping along as long as my body and my mind will cooperate with me.
Yeah. So when you're in that state of play, as you just said, the requirements of what needs to get done to handle your shit, so to speak, or to get things to the next level, it's like there's just a knowing. Trust within yourself that you can or must do this work, and it's I've definitely gone through phases where I've danced in and out of that, where I've lost the play or I found the play, and in that play it's like I'm not even working today, like this is my joy, my I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this.
Exactly. Yeah. And
I'm going to be found out.
Yeah, that's true. But it really is true that when you're doing that, it's like, gee, I am so blessed because I actually get paid to do something that I love to do. And I think I'll keep doing it until I reach a point where, and hopefully never, but hopefully, I'll keep doing it until I reach a point where one day I wake up and say, you know what, this just isn't fun anymore. And then it's time to look for something else. But I haven't found that spot yet. I just keep enjoying what I'm doing. And not only is it wonderful from the standpoint of being able to help other people, but the growth that I get from helping others and learning from the experiences that they have is just so powerful that it just it's sort of the fuel in the rocket ship that's taking me wherever I'm going to go.
Yeah, and with ones like fuel, so to speak, there's a resource. I always tell people, you haven't been a fitness coach for a number of years, almost a past life, but it's still intertwined with everything I do. It's showing people that once you tap into that reservoir there, you don't realize that beneath that reservoir there's another reservoir, and beneath that reservoir is another reservoir, and there's this unlimited fuel. And so maybe like when you wrote this book, you've got this incredible book here about purpose. What is purpose when it comes to one's fuel, one's like once I can access this, it's almost like, I always tell people, I say, when you get your purpose, get really on point with purpose. There's not a lot of room for alcohol and drugs and Netflix series. And don't get me wrong, those are things, you can always find room to entertain yourself with things, but they can't be used as distractions, because what is the Blues Brothers says, we're on a mission from God. Like you're on this mission, and their requirements.
Yeah, well, I think the thing that happens is once you really discover what your purpose in life, and it's almost it's purpose, it's a calling, it's what you were designed to do. That in itself creates a combination of energy and focus. So that you become single-mindedly focused on the achievement of the goals and closing the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And that becomes so energizing that it's, I guess I would say it's almost a drug in and of itself. You get the highs off of that because you get the endorphins flowing, and you're just so happy with what you're doing. That you just want to keep fueling that. You just want to keep pushing forward. And so, like you said, everything else in life sort of takes a back seat. And that doesn't mean, like you said, it doesn't mean that we don't stop and smell the roses and enjoy things along the way, because you have to have that balance of doing what you're passionate about, but also giving yourself a time to relax and to recharge your batteries and to do other things that are important in life, be with family and that sort of thing. But it seems like everything else in life goes better when you have that focus and you have that purpose, because you're happy with yourself, you're happy with the progress that you're making, and that makes the rest of the world feel different.
How does like your podcast show up, like with your family? Like how does your purpose, how does it show up outside of when you're doing purposeful work in your career? How does your purpose show up in the rest of your life? How is it an integral part of the rest of your life, would you say?
I think people in my family see the positive energy, they see the creativity, they see the ability to handle different situations, in a different way. So it's just, rather than getting held up by things, it's just like, it's just another little molehill that you have to walk over on the way to your life. And we've my wife and I have raised 3 grown daughters now, and even before I was on my own, I've always sort of had a sense of what my purpose in life was to be, and I passed that on to my kids. And I think that it's driven them and help them to define what they really want to do in life, the contributions that they want to make. And now the 3 of them are well on the road to to being able to do that. In fact, I look at a lot of the things that they've accomplished in their lives and say, gee, in the fields that they're in, they have far surpassed what I've done, and that's the goal.
Yeah, how do you install that in these young women at an early age? How did you get these principles and this this philosophy for life that's a guiding light to bite for them? I mean, each were different. How did you get them to grab hold of this at like a faith?
I think it had a lot to do with faith in the way that we raised them. We raised them with the philosophy that that God didn't create you and put you on this planet to occupy space and suck up all the oxygen. He's given you talents, he's given you gifts, he's given you a mission to accomplish. It's up to you to find out what those things are. Find out what you're passionate about in life, and when you find out what you're passionate about, be willing to give it your all, and push for those validating points along the road. And
That's such a
as
different
a,
approach than like my dad's approach from what I remember. I think it's just different for maybe for women, a father to his daughters versus my dad's like, well, I guess you were just put here to take up space and suck up all the oxygen.
yeah, I don't know. I often wonder how I would have apparently parented differently if I'd had boys instead of girls. But I'm glad I had the girls, and I think the combination, the teamwork between my wife and I sort of provided a lot of the motivation and pushing them to find their passion, and she gave them the practical. She's a teacher, so she gave them the practical skills of how do you learn, how do you organize, how do you capitalize on everything that's given to you. And thankfully these kids have taken advantage of every opportunity that's been put in front of them. And now we have a doctor, we have a nurse practitioner, and we have a corporate attorney, and they all love what they do. They're all good at what they do. They're well recognized in their fields, and I'm just really happy with the way they turned out.
Yeah, I think you're very blessed to have had such complementary parents that brought unique. You brought the philosophy and the push and the drive and the inspiration, and the your wife bringing the practicality piece. Of how to like, here's how you actually like. Here's how you get a good grade at this. It sounds good theoretically, but like you got to do the work, my friend.
That's right. That's right.
So a lot of times, here's a question for you. A lot of times folks, when they think about purpose, they think about finding it, discovering it, and it's almost like, oh gosh, we're leaving it to another. Christopher Columbus is going to be like, I just found this piece of land here. Like the land wasn't there before it got there. And maybe talk a little bit about what it takes to unravel a mystery at a purpose at a young age versus having to wait much later in life after a few too many years of a career that you had to do, and an academic path that you had to follow. How might one begin to investigate this very elusive target?
I think, and it's going to be somewhat different for each individual, but it's really sort of taking stock. I think it begins to, with taking stock of yourself to say, okay, where am I in life? Who am I? What is it that I want to be? And looking at, what passions do I have in life? What skill sets do I have? How are those things going to eventually be able to combine with each other? But I think a lot of what I take people through, and with the younger generation, it's maybe a little bit more challenging, but I try to get them, as Stephen Covey talks about, I try to get them to begin with the end in mind. And that is, imagine yourself being, 90 or 95 years old. You're at the end of your life, and you're looking back on your life, and begin to ask yourself some really high quality questions. Things like, what have I accomplished with my life that I'm most proud of? What have I done in my life that I'm absolutely ashamed of? What kind of relationships have I developed along the way? How have I impacted the lives of other people? And have those is the impact that I've had, has it been positive? Has it been negative? Those kinds of things. And as you begin to ask yourself those questions, I think you begin to find not your purpose, but the threads of what will eventually become your purpose. But it's taking the time to do that sort of introspection, and that's the challenge, because we live in a world where we move at such an incredibly fast pace that people aren't willing to slow down and say, you know what, sometimes I just need to get away by myself and just sit and think and meditate and talk to God and really figure out what this whole journey on life on planet Earth is all about.
Mm. Yeah, I know for me at my early, I mean, I think it was all these folks that were actually reflecting back to me, hey, Glenn, you should be doing this. You're really good at this. And like, and you suck at this, you know, like you're not a natural at these things here, you know, but these things here, you tend to just gravitate towards, you tend to be lit up by, you know, knowing you. Because I was in those earlier stages, I wasn't quite trusting. I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe I'm good at this, maybe I'm not. So the path for me was not very clear at first. It was kind of a guessing game. First knocks at the door were chirps, just nothing, you know. And then I had to have it reflected from the outside world, and then then I started, through some life's trials and tribulations, coming back to a place to finding that seat of the soul and checking in and spending time in enough contemplation, enough time in pause, that letting the velocity of my life slow down for more than a moment, but maybe it was actually a number of years of kind of resting with, is this all there is? Is this what this is supposed to be about? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Is this who I am even? Like it was a questioning,
and
question of what am I not? I don't know if that makes sense. Kind of like, maybe that's not me.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I went through. And when I was a kid, I was a musician, and that's what I wanted. Yeah, that's what I wanted to do with my life. I grew up in a musical family. My mom was a pianist and an organist. My dad was a tuba player. And they didn't do that for a living. They did it as hobbies, but they were both very much involved in the musical community where we lived. And my mom started me playing piano when I was 3 years old. And so it became a natural thing for me. I loved music. I loved playing. I went through a number of different instruments before I finally settled somewhere between French horn and trumpet, because I love French horn. I love playing classical music, but I also love jazz, and there is no such thing as a jazz French horn. So I learned to play trumpet. But when I think I was like maybe toward the end of my junior year of high school, it was, I was sort of coming up against of like, oh, okay, well, what am I going to do with my life? I've got this passion for music. It's all I've really focused on in my life. What am I going to do? And at the time I was taking French horn lessons from a fellow who was the first horn of the Hartford, Connecticut Symphony. And so I would go on Saturday mornings to the Hart School of Music in Hartford, and I would study with him. And one Saturday morning I went in and I said, Jim, I don't want to play today. I want to talk. And he said, okay, what do you want to talk about? And I said, I need your honest assessment. Do I have what it takes to make it as a professional musician? And he looked at me and smiled, and he said, I'll answer your question, but I'll first tell you that you're asking the wrong question. And I said, okay. And he said, do you have what it takes? Yes, you do. He said, do you have what it takes to get into the top 1/10 of 1% who make all the money? No, you don't. And he said, I'm not saying that to put you down. I'm saying that because I'm a lot better than you, and I'm not there, and I never will be. But he said, the question you really want to ask yourself is, are you prepared to live the lifestyle of a musician? And he said, I'll give you an example. He said, I teach here at the Hart School of Music. I'm the first horn of the Hartford Symphony. I play with a half a dozen pickup groups. And he said, my wife is the first flute of the Hartford Symphony. She teaches at New England Conservatory. She plays with her own unique set of pickup groups. And he said, between the two of us, we make a decent living. But he said, I got 2 kids. He said, I never see my kids. He said, I leave home at 6 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Friday. I get home at 11 o'clock at night. And on Saturday and Sunday, when everybody's doing their birthday parties and their backyard barbecues and stuff like that, guess what? I'm playing performances. So he said, stop and think about that. He said, if you want to have a good, solid family life where you can go to work at 9 o'clock in the morning and come home at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and do homework with your kids and, and be involved as a family man, you don't want music for a lifestyle. And so I left that meeting, and after thinking about it for a couple of days, it was like, holy crap, I don't want my life, despite the fact that I love music, I don't want my life to be like this. So what the hell am I going to do?
So
You know, how,
sold you out on the lifestyle. So he's like, this is the lifestyle of this. This is what's possible for you. And gave you a salary cap basically too. So like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. You know, there was a ceiling and, you know, and a lifestyle that I didn't want to live. And so I began to think about things and sort of taking inventory. And at that point, honestly, I had no idea what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. But there was a local technical college, and they were offering free entrance exams. And so I figured, well, I'll go and take the entrance exam. Maybe that'll tell me something. And a couple of weeks after taking the entrance exam, I got a call from the dean of the school saying that I scored the highest of anyone who had taken the test, that I had an extremely high aptitude for mathematics and science. And so I thought, well, let's give it a shot. So I went to school to study engineering. And the first class that I took was a class in manufacturing processes. And literally, you know, the fellow who was teaching the class, it was funny because I had to go to the bookstore to get the book for this class. And this was back in 1970. Okay. So a long time ago. And the book was $150. It was about this thick, 8.5 by 11-inch format. And it was all about manufacturing processes. And I remember sitting at home at my desk in my room, thumbing through this book, saying to myself, I will never be able to learn this stuff. But I get to class and everybody brings their big book to class on the first day. And he says, guys, leave those books in your locker. You'll refer to them from time to time, but that's not what this class is all about.
My God.
And literally what he would do is he would take something every day he came to class. He would take something like this and he would say, how do you think this is made? And he would break us up into, you know, into groups, and we would sit and brainstorm with each other about, you know, how this could possibly be made. And he would come around from group to group and sort of guide the conversation. And then at the end of class, he would tell us how it was made. And so I became completely absorbed and fascinated with how do you make things? And about a year into the program, I had to decide, was I going to take the route into manufacturing engineering or was I going to go into mechanical engineering? And the guy who was the head of mechanical engineering, I was #1 in my class at the time, and he was lobbying me very heavily to, you know, to come into mechanical engineering. And so I went to Bill, the guy who was the manufacturing guy, and I said, so Bill, what's your pitch for manufacturing engineering? And he looked at me sort of funny and he said, don't have a pitch. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, I have a question. And I said, okay. And he said, what is it that you want to do with the rest of your life? And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, where do you get your jollies? What are you passionate about? He said, would you rather sit behind a drawing board all day designing stuff, or do you want to be out on the manufacturing floor, getting your hands dirty, making stuff? And I said, no, I want to make stuff. And he said, then you know what you want to do, don't you? And that launched my engineering career into the manufacturing world. And I did that for the better part of 13 years, you know, if in various engineering capacities, from a junior engineer up to a senior project engineer. And then I realized that if I wanted to go further, and if I wanted to keep progressing in a business career, which I was having a lot of fun with, I needed to go back to school. I needed to get some more education. So I went back to school, got my MBA, and then was offered an opportunity to move from, you know, being an individual contributor into various leadership roles. And for the next 12 or 13 years, I was running companies for other people and just having the time of my life. But I finally reached a point where, just like you did, it's like, hey, I'm having a blast. I really enjoy what I'm doing. I'm blessed because I fell into something that I really love. But is this all there is? Is this the limit of the impact that I can have in life? And that's what began to, you know, to really start me down the pathway of saying, you know what, I need to expand my sphere of influence. I need to impact more lives. And therefore, I really have to get out and be on my own. And that's what sort of led to a combination of consulting, coaching, writing books, speaking, those kinds of things, to be able to just say, listen, I've got a lot of experience. I've got some good knowledge. I've got a message that I need to share with the rest of the world. Let's go do it.
Yeah, it's amazing how, and you know, you make it sound so eloquent, but I know like for myself, it's, you know, my experience has been a battle with the contrasting parts of yourself, you know, and
Oh,
sometimes an outward tantrum, you know, like I've done with at men's tribes with a number of men that I go deep with, and you know, the conversation was, I just remember, you know, one of those nights where it was like yelling at the moon and around a fire, and it was like, just because I'm good at something doesn't mean I have to do it the rest of my life. You know, and like I want to do something else, you know, and you know, and then those questions, you know, came about of, am I built to sit at a computer all day or a cubby, or like, you know, like, you know, I'm used to getting my hands dirty with people and animating, and am I going to want to go, you know, like I was actually wanting to go, I'll just take a corporate job, you know, I'll do the reverse of what everybody does that leaves corporate. I'm going to come to corporate. And it's just amazing how so everyone, you know, at least my path, you know, it wasn't like this to the moon. It was a lot of, you know, the entrepreneurial path of great idea, crazy idea, you know, this is going to work, this is so not going to work, oh maybe it is, and having to pivot constantly to a new place after some self-reflection and sitting with and self-analyzing, who am I becoming, and what's staying with me on the next phase of the journey, and what's got to go and be shed. But I assume, you know, with your work as a coach as well, when it comes to purpose in this like playful arena where there's all this freedom to explore, you know, what do you want your ideal lifestyle and day to look like and feel like, and how you impact others, and mainly, you know, how you have service to others, and have you honed some of these things already in your life, and are they some obvious things that you're a natural at, or that light you up? You know, there are all these kind of variables that go into one's purpose. And maybe share a little bit about your experience with when you get to work with clients, and you know, often they come in distraught, you know, or in a sticky place where they know how to do what they do. It's clearly got them thus far, but it might not get them the next, you know, step. They need a reframe of things. They need a reformulation. Maybe share a little bit about that piece, because I know you get to swim in that quite a bit.
yeah, you're absolutely right. And unfortunately, sometimes people wait until they've dug the hole so deep, you know, that they can't get out. There are very, very few people who will start to encounter issues, and the first thought that enters their mind is, I need to get a coach because I need somebody to help me sort this out. They generally try to do it themselves. And after they've corkscrewed themselves into the ground a few feet, you know, then it's sort of like, you know, you see the little hand coming up out of the hole saying, help, help, help.
Yep.
You know, but at the same time, I think a lot of times people misunderstand what coaches are for, because I've had a number of clients where, you know, they treat me like I'm some sort of answer man, where they want to come to me and say, Gary, this is my problem, you tell me what to do. And it's like, no, 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 that's not how this works. I'm not an answer man, I'm a guide. I'm the one who's going to guide you through this journey of self-discovery. And one of the things I learned as an engineer is to be insanely curious about things. I ask lots of questions and probe and sort of peel back the layers of the onion as we go on this journey of self-discovery. And what I'm looking for is that aha moment where it's just, you know, all of a sudden I see your eyes light up and I see the little light bulb on top of your head, and it's like, oh, and it's like, yeah, you finally got it, didn't you? You know, and that's the, you know, that's the journey. And depending on who the person is and how, you know, how far off the mark they really are, sometimes it takes a long time for people to be able to process and get that. But just to continue to sort of take their hand and lead them down the pathway and saying, hey, listen, you're the one who's going to discover the answers here, because I might be able to tell you what I think you need to do, but if it's not your idea, you don't have any skin in the game. And if you don't have any skin in the game, you're not going to do anything about it. You know, so I need you to come to these conclusions. And when you come to the conclusions, then we can sit back and say, all right, now let's take the next step. You know, we've decided what it is that we want to be. what are the gaps that exist between where we are and where we want to go, and what do we have to do to fill those gaps? And then that becomes another journey of leading them through, because a lot of times people will say, well, what technical skills do I have to learn to do this job? And it's like, the technical skills are only 20% of it. 80% of it is, who do you need to become as a person in order to be prepared to take on this next phase of your life? And that's the journey that just keeps evolving.
Yeah, it's an unfolding. Yeah, it's not, you're not going to get it all up front. You're going to get it all the way along the meat of the journey. So,
and that's one of the things that I found, quite honestly, Glenn, through my faith. I often comment that, when God put me on this earth, if he laid out the whole map of my life in front of me and said, here's what you're going to do, and here's where you're going to be, at age 30 and 40 and 50 and 60 and 70, and here's where your life is going to end, I'd be looking at him and say, gee, that's wonderful. What the heck do I need you for? But God doesn't work that way. He says, listen, take the next step. I'll show you the next step. Take that step and trust that I know what I'm doing. And after you take that step, I'll give you the next step. And that's the way.
So much like when I've done climbing, when I was climbing Devil's Tower a week and a half ago, it was like, I was yelling up to my guide. I'm like, hey, I've never been in a situation like this before. How do I get through this part? How do I get out of this? Like, he's like, there should be like a little tiny foothold over there. And I'm like, I can't get to it, like, not from this position I'm in. I'm like, if I move my arm here and shove it in there, and then I do this, and I'm like, and then I get up to all the way up to here. He's like, okay, then you didn't need that. And then he's like, what do you do next? I'm like, well, if I put one foot out here, I can't see the rest of anything, and I get out there, and then it revealed to me I can get my pinky up here, I can grab this thing, and he's like, okay, yeah, do more of that. And I'm like, well, it seems to be revealing to me the how-to along the way.
Yeah, that's it. And that's what it is. But that's where the personal development and the becoming as a human being is so important, because you have to have that inner strength and that belief in yourself, that self-confidence that says, I'm in a dark room and I'm not quite sure where the door is. I've got sort of a general sense of what direction it is, and I'm going to put my foot out there anyway, and I'm going to take that step, and I'm going to take the risk that I'm headed in the right direction.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's you're not getting out alive. You're gonna have to take a risk.
Right.
You do all the calculating, all the formulating, and the fact is, you're still gonna have to kind of pop out of your head and trust your body and move forward. And it's the whole game of life is risky. Every time we step out our door, it's risky.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, every time you get out of bed,
it's risky,
you're,
right?
You're
yeah.
taking a risk. I mean, one of the examples I use is the example of an airplane. Let's say that you're taking an airplane and you're flying from New York City to London in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't realize it, but that plane is off course 95% of the time. That's what autopilots are for, because the autopilot is looking and constantly analyzing where the position of that aircraft is. And so the whole flight over to the UK is off course, correct, off course, correct, off course, correct. And that's similar to what our lives are. We have to be aware of what's going on and realize that, we're going to go through those peaks and valleys of where we're on course, off course. And one of the things that I teach in my book is a process called PDCAR: plan, do, check, adjust, repeat. You put a plan in place, you take action toward the plan, you monitor yourself, to see if you're headed in the right direction. And if you're not, you make the appropriate adjustments, and you repeat that process all over again. And that's the way we live our lives. And if we're doing that on a regular basis, we can make those little minute course corrections that will keep us on track. But a lot of times people don't do that.
Right.
They put a plan in place and they're going down the speedway at 100 miles an hour. They're not watching where they're going. And then they get upset because they crashed into a wall.
Right. So basically you get spanked if you don't adhere to your plan and have some form of tracking method as to how well you're on track.
Right. And that's what I learned out of the manufacturing world, is that in the manufacturing world, everything is metrics. You monitor virtually everything that's critical to the operation. and you do it in such a way that that you understand things that are going wrong before you're so far off course that you can't get back there. So as an example, rather than manufacturing a part and then checking to see if the part is good, why don't you look at it from the standpoint of what are the critical process parameters that guarantee if I stay within a certain window, I'm going to get a good part every time. Monitor those process parameters. And if you see one of them starting to drift, toward either the upper or the lower limit that you've set, make the adjustment before it starts making bad parts. We can do the same thing with our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's I love what's the grid? I always forget it, even though it's I don't know, it's Stephen Covey, but just how we focus on things that are urgent but important.
The Eisenhower matrix. Yeah.
The Eisenhower matrix. Yeah. So the challenge is kind of, a lot of folks in our society, the way things are set up, we all spend our time focusing on things that are urgent and important, maybe to others, that we procrastinated on, or that are hard pressing for us. And if we get out of balance and spend too much time and energy and resources in that area, well, then there's going to be more cigarettes, more drinking, more Netflix, more gambling, more all the other stuff. But if we can focus on things that are not urgent, but important to us, and tell ourselves those things are urgent and make those a priority, we will feel most alive, most lit up. We will have less room and time for distractions. And it's a really good gauge, tracking method, guiding light for us to see how we're doing on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis. Like, am I in my sweet spot, just feeling like nothing's hard pressing, but I'm just doing things that right now I'm working on stuff that I really want to be working on. I'm hanging out with the people I really want to be hanging out with. I'm doing things that are really meaningful. This is the juicy challenge I really wanted to be, investing in. This is the beach I wanted to be lying, the hammock I wanted to be in. That if we can focus on moving away from that velocity that gets out of control of like all these hard pressing things fighting for our time, and instead we go, all right, I only got so many Wednesdays left. How am I going to use them? How am I going to be of greatest impact and service to others with the time I have allotted? And if I don't do this by autopilot, urgency, then everybody else who's clear about what's important to them is going to get on my runway. And then also now I'm going to start having to, decompress from the weight, the burden of that with lots of things that are unimportant, unurgent.
Well, and that's where I think, maybe a segue into a little bit different part of the conversation. That's where I think that people, when they're looking for coaches, have to be really, really careful. They have to take the time to scope things out and understand who they're working with. Several years ago, I gave a talk to a group of local business people, and I was talking about time management. And at the beginning of the talk, I happened to mention, sort of in doing my own little commercial, that I'm a coach. And about 2 tables back from where the stage was, there was this gentleman sitting there, and he said, you coaches, you don't know what you're doing. And he caught himself and said, oh, hey, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. And I said, no, this is wonderful. And he said, how can it be wonderful? I just criticized you. I said, no, this is wonderful because this is an opportunity for everybody in this room to learn something. And he said, okay. And I said, will you play along with me for a few minutes here? And he said, sure. And I said, obviously you've had a bad experience with a coach. And he said, yes, I have. And I said, would you tell us about it? And he said, yeah. He said, several years ago, I hired this executive coach, worked with him for several months, paid him several $1,000s. And he said, you know what I wound up with? And I said, what's that? And he said, another to-do list from hell. And he said, what do you have to say about that? And I said, shame on your coach. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, if you had been working with me, you would have wound up with a lot less on your list, but it would have been a whole lot more important. I said, my goal is not to give you more things to do. My goal is to give you, is to get you focused on the important things in life that you need to do, and then get you laser focused on accomplishing those things. So you wind up with a whole lot less to do. It's just a whole ton more important. And I think that that's what a good coach does. It helps people, like you're saying, get rid of all the trash in your life that, that stuff that you should either not be doing at all, or stuff that you can delegate to other people that is not where your sweet spot is. It's not what you want to be doing, so that you can focus on the stuff that ultimately gets you where you want to be. But the problem is that you can't identify what all of that focus stuff is until you know what your purpose is.
Yeah. So sometimes it's like really pulling back and slowing down to be in this process. It's a process, and you're not going to get it or find it or discover it if you keep ramping up
Right.
that with your busyness.
Right. And sometimes it's just, it's listening for those still small voices in your life. I'll give you a classic example of that. My oldest daughter went to medical school, became a pediatrician, and she was trying to, during her residency, she was trying to figure out what it was that she wanted to do with her life, because she said, I could be just a general pediatrician and go to work in a doctor's office, start my own practice or something. But she really liked the idea of working in the hospital, and she was rotating as a resident. She was rotating through all of these different pediatric departments, trying to figure out, was there a particular specialty that she wanted to pursue? Mm-hmm. And she said she did a 6-week rotation in the neonatal intensive care unit. And she said one night, it was like 2:00 in the morning, and the attending physician, who was the head of that particular unit, was there. And she said, I'm by this little isolette taking care of this little 23-week-old or 23-week gestation baby. And she said, all of a sudden I feel this arm come around my shoulder and this voice whisper in my ear, this is what you were called to do. This is where you need to dedicate your life. And she said, I turned, and it was this attending physician. And he said, I've seen a lot of people come through this unit, but he said, I've never seen someone who's so gifted in caring for these little ones as you. Think about that. And she went forward from there. She finished her residency, went on to another hospital to do a year as a chief resident. And that kept, sort of was almost like a pinprick in the back of her mind, that he kept saying that to her, that's what she really needed to do. And she went back to the same hospital, did a fellowship in neonatology, and now she can't imagine herself doing anything else. She said, I absolutely love what I do. I'm making a difference in the world. I'm helping children. I'm helping their families. And it just doesn't get any better than this.
Yeah, that's, it's innate in all of us. We all want to make a difference in the world. And yes, some of us are gifted with many things we could be making a difference in the world with. But it's more importantly, whether you bring a bunch of those together, or there's one channel you decide to go down, like you could have with music or with engineering, and now this, or how all these stories and all these experiences brought you to this fully encapsulated being now at this stage of life that's able to hold space, a container for everyone that comes in uniquely blended. And there's my experience when it comes to purpose. It's what lights you up right now is very important. It's very important. Like, okay, like they heed the call, they feel the touch on the shoulder, they hear the voice of acknowledgement, but wouldn't be able to hear that, wouldn't be able to feel that, wouldn't be able to receive that if it wasn't, divine timing, so to speak. There's that faith piece. Maybe speaking a little bit about, there's that part of it, that divine part that also comes into play, that says, stay here for a while, flow here, follow here, learn everything you can get your hands on.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there, because
I gotta bring you around with me throughout the day, because if you just kind of whispered, the hand on the shoulder, you're absolutely right about that. You're absolutely right. Everybody needs one of this. Just sign up with him just for being absolutely right about whatever it is you're doing. So
Yeah, but yeah, I think you're right, because I mean, going back to the beginning of my career as an engineer when I was, 22, 23 years old, if you had told me back then what I would be doing now, I would have said you're full of crap.
Mm.
No way. There's no way I'm going to do something like that. And that's where I think that that's where the divinity comes in, sort of the divine presence that needs to know that knows that you need to stay here, you need to use this opportunity. And even though you think you're just doing your job, you learning another set of skills, or you're deepening your understanding of something, and that is going to be a puzzle piece that's going to get used 30, 40 years down the road from now. um, it's going to get used, and it's going to get used in multiple places. It's going to get used in other work that you do. It's going to get used in your family. It's going to be used to achieve your purpose. It's going to be used to impact the lives of others. And yet at the time that you're there experiencing that, you have no idea what that's going to be or where it's going to get used. But when you get down the road, and I sit now, I mean, even in the consulting work that I do, I go into, an attorney's office, and I can help them become more productive and more profitable at what they do. But the skill set that I'm applying to them is a skill set that I learned 40 years ago. But I had no idea at the time that I was going to be in that situation, helping that particular individual, that particular law firm. No idea at all. And so it's that learning process, and learning to embrace that, and sort of wring everything that you possibly can out of every moment that you're on this planet. Learn as much as you can, not just in studying and gaining experience, but learning to listen to the forward thinkers, to surround yourself with people who are further down the road of life than you are, people who have the experience, people who have the wisdom, and they're willing to share it with you. And the more you do that, the more you're filling yourself up to be able to, to turn that spigot on and fill other people up.
Yeah, I often think of us as like Sherpas. We talked about climbing mountains earlier, and how sometimes we take the burden off of the tourists when they show up. It's kind of funny how for many, many years you see all these great white guys climb, Everest, or one of these other crazy, incredible climbs. And I don't know if you've seen in the recent, like there was a Netflix show just this last year where this Nepalese guy finally the camera's turned on him, and he goes and climbs like 15 of these things, within a few months or so. And like, of course he can. Of course these guys can. Of course they light up when one guy climbs, comes out and climbs one of these things. We light up when we see someone, really when the light bulb goes off, with the teachers, like for me, I was very blessed to work with this gentleman. His name is Richard Sandella. He's the godfather of the sport of jump rope around the world, the International Foundation. And he had been on like Captain Kangaroo and Teacher of the Year award at the White House. And I helped him come back from open heart surgery, and he getting back healthy and stuff. And he taught me everything about jump rope. And just to see his face light up, the first time I got 1,000 jumps with no misses, and or a few minutes, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 minutes, whatever it was, of doubles in a row. See him light up, and he was the guy who's like, you could be the next world champion. I was like, oh my gosh, I got Castellamato here, like in my corner telling me you're the greatest. I was like Tyson, going like, I am. I'm like, yeah, okay, you know what? I am the greatest. And to have someone in your corner, a coach, a teacher, someone that lets you, they explain a particular technique, they inspire you with a possible mindset and a birth of vision that you think they're crazy for having. And then you go through this process of learning and acquiring knowledge and skill set. And then now, like, God, I think of like the thousands of people I've tortured with like, oh, it's too bad you missed it, 999. Let's do it again. And I've helped so many, I've been blessed to just be a witness of others, figuring it out inside themselves. and accomplishing something really extraordinary. And yeah, to me, that speaks purpose to me. It's like, okay, I'm supposed to be here right now doing this, because nobody else will get as excited as I am about this thing right now. My client drinking more water, when I was a personal trainer starting off, or just all the young people that I've worked with, that, them getting their certification and thinking about, gosh, I failed the first time I took my personal training certificate, and then having to really study my butt off, and then acing that test and going, gosh, I think I failed it, but I actually crushed it, and crushed the next exam and the next cert and all those things. And I'd gone from the person that doubted themselves to like, I'll do it in 1/100th of the time it takes the average person, and so it's interesting how we've all gone through this process with ourselves of loving ourselves deeply enough to, and with detached compassion, embrace a part of ourselves that wants to soar, wants to be free, wants to be at play, wants permission to be great. And I think that's the thing that us coaches, we're very, those of us who have turned on that switch to that room have realized I have a lot of power here to actually give someone permission to be great.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, ooh, respect the power. Ooh, respect what I'm here for, and not waste another minute, and be careless with the gifts I've been given. There really are. It's kind of funny. It's like, yeah, I've honed and I've harnessed and I've done all those things, but these are gifts. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really true. And it's also, making sure that through all of the skills that you've developed and the gifts that you've honed and everything, it's maintaining that attitude of humility and reminding yourself every day that it's not about me. It's not about me at all. Got nothing to do with me. I'm just
the
a
integrity
vessel.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just a vessel that's being used to, to help other people. But you're right. I mean, that whole process that you were just talking about is what gives meaning to our lives. What gets us excited. And I get jumping up and down saying, yes, 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 they did it. They did it.
Yeah, they got it.
And knowing that now that they've got it, they're equipped with the tools to go do it again, and they don't need me. It's sort of like the mother bird. She gets the baby in the nest, and the baby jumps on her back and flies around. And after a little while of doing that, the mother says, "Okay, now it's time. Kick you out, go fly," and the baby does.
Yeah, that's I've often, for people not in the necessarily in this position that we're in, have often said, Glenn, you give everybody a little too much. You keep kicking everybody out of the nest. Like, you need to be like a pill pusher. and I'm like, that's just not my nature and not the way. It's like being a part of a Jedi tribe of like, this is how the torch gets passed, and you have to honor and respect that. And it's natural anyways. I'm there, I always look at, like, someone knocks on my door, I'm here to be used up. And there'll be a time when I knock on other people's doors for asking for help and direction, and not, it's my own seeking. And my job is to turn them back inward and find the answers within and get on their path. And then, hey, maybe I'll see you at the next corner.
Right. Right. And that's the real key to it is that, we're not about creating codependent relationships. I don't want somebody to have to come running to me every time they have a situation they have to deal with. I'd much rather equip them with the tools to deal with it themselves. And hey, if you want to check in occasionally, like you said, when you get to the next turn, if you want to get together and talk through the next philosophy, then you've already got the tools that you need. You may just need somebody to ask you the right couple of questions and tweak things a little bit, and you're off and running again.
Yes. Yeah. And that's that, when choosing wisely, when you're researching and looking for a coach, I want you to take that into consideration when you pick up the phone and call Gare. And I'll give you his contact information here in a moment. Well, he will. experience I've had in an industry that's cluttered with organizations that promote independence but breed codependency. When you are looking for a coach, you're looking for someone that's been there, that's maybe a few leaps ahead of you. That's like, hey, wow, I would like you to not have to go through maybe what I went through, and here's what I've learned, and see if this helps you at this stage of the game along the way here. And then, come back and see me. You need help with something else, that there, or I'll point you in the right direction and resources of other coaches. Part of what I do with my business is I partner people with other coaches. My passion is like, okay, I got the gist of this. I got a very good understanding of where you're at and what you're looking for. And I got a guy or a gal that's like just gotten through this. Just get in a conversation with them. They might bring a notepad to that conversation, buy them lunch, or meet with them, do a certain number of sessions with them, whatever. It's get into a conversation, a new conversation, because the one you're in right now has gotten you to this doorstep. And then to get to the next place here, you've got to get in a new conversation that's going to get you into a new belief system, and then the appropriate behavioral modifications, and then the possibilities that can be birthed. So I think, going back to when someone's looking into hiring a coach, or reaching out to you, Gary, what would be, the thing that you would let them know right at your doorstep, coming in, how are you going to take care of them, or in better suit, like, hey, I'm not your guy. Here's how I'm going to take care of you.
Yeah, and for me, it's really taking the time. I offer a free initial session so that we can chat, and the whole goal behind it is not to try to solve your problems, but to answer two fundamental questions. One is when I'm looking at what it is that you need, are the skill sets that I have appropriate to help you with the problem that you have? And secondly, from a personality point of view, are we hand in glove? Are we a good fit to be able to work together and to be able to communicate and understand each other? And I will from time to time look at situations and say, somebody will say, well, I have problem ABC, and it's like, what, I have some experience with that, but it's really not my sweet spot. And rather than putting you through the effort of me learning the additional things that I need to learn, I'll introduce you to somebody who can help you, because that's exactly what they do. They do it all day long, and they're very, very good at it. Now, so you need to have a conversation with them. And so I'm all about putting my skill sets to work where they're appropriate. But like Clint Eastwood always said, a man's got to know his limitations. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. And some of it is, because I just don't have any interest, in learning that. I focused in on a certain set of skills, and I've tried to get very, very good at that niche that I do. And it's not that I can't do other stuff. It's just that I'm not up on a lot of the new stuff in those areas that's going on. And the other thing that I think is important too, because I know there are people who are going to watch this video. They'll link to it from my site, and they'll watch it and they'll say, Gary, but Glenn is your competition. And it's like, no, Glenn's not my competition. Glenn and I are collaborators. We work together to improve the lives of people. And so it's not a competition. Whether, if somebody needs a coach, if Glenn is the best coach, I don't want to be working with them. I want Glenn to work with them, and vice versa. Glenn, wants people to work with me if my skill set is a better fit for the things that they need, just like you were talking about before. And when we begin to take that sort of attitude that says, hey, I don't have to hang on to anybody. That's not what it's all about. It's about letting go and helping people, doing the best that we can, and operating in that vein of integrity to make sure that people are getting the best coaches in the world to work with, to help them with the problems that they're facing.
Yeah, operating that vein of integrity. I think it also comes to the consumer as well too with that. And kind of going back to what you just said, about the articulation of what you're needing. We all know what it's like when we meet somebody
and they just get us. They just understand. They kind of know those little subtle nuances. And, I've had experiences when I've hired someone, I'm like, I just want to get this thing done. I just want to accomplish, achieve the outcome. There's a desired outcome. And somehow or another, the expert that I'm hiring, we're just missing each other in the articulation of what my needs are and what I'm needing for me uniquely. Even though I feel I might be communicating them effectively, they're not able to articulate, bring that information back to me. And that's a really good sign that this is going to be a very difficult relationship to someone to work with. Though, even though I've confined myself to like, this is the thing, and I'm going to work with this person, I'm going to do this work. Your ability to articulate and their ability to articulate back to you in a way that says, hey, this is going to be a good experience. Because life is experience. Like we all know people who have told us the truth and told us, how it is. And, like, you're not thanking them later. You're like, that guy was an asshole, and he didn't really listen to me, care about me. And he just had to tell me how it is. And, even if I did mess up on this and go with their directions, like, I'm not going to thank him later. So I think like when it comes to like creating experience, because this is coaches, we're here to create an experience. It's a teamwork, it's collaboration, it's a partnership. We're both going to sweat and work hard towards some goals, right? Like when a client comes to me, I match them with my, they bring a certain amount of effort in, I'm going to match them with that effort. If they don't bring enough in, it's not going to work. If they're giving 20% and I'm giving 80%, like we both got to give 110%.
Right.
And with that, it's really important to know, is this someone that I can be a partner with, a team with, that this feels good? Like my head, heart, and gut in connecting with that wisdom. When I check in with myself, I go, this feels, when I look at it, beyond the logistics, what kind of experience do I want to have? Is this going to be fulfilling for me? Is this going to be fulfilling work for them? They're going to want to fire me as a client because I'm just a pain in the ass, because I'm asking some things that are just, going over their head, that are demanding, but to me are important. So really coming down to like articulating what's most important, and that has to be an ongoing basis, not just out the gates. So I think we can all get a hit of those things when, okay, it's probably not sometimes the best decision is not to make a decision and to go, this is not a good fit right now. I need to trust myself. Maybe that's one of the first things when you're looking for a coach, is like, trust yourself a little bit more here in this place where you're not trusting yourself.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there.
Oh, there it is again. I'm telling you, you got to hang with me. I need you.
Yeah. But and it comes on, as you said, it comes on both sides. There are times when when the coach has to say, you know what, I really love you, and and that sort of stuff. But this is not going to work the way we want it to.
Right.
So rather than get too far down the road and have you be unhappy and me be unhappy, let's find somebody else, where there's that, there's that resonance between the two of you, so that it's not only going to help you make progress in life, but it's going to be an enjoyable journey, and you're going to build some relationships and build some friendships along the way.
Yeah. And all of us coaches have made that mistake of hanging on to that one rocking your shoe client, that's like, okay, guys, I'm just supposed to grow here. What I need to look at, how this person's here to challenge me, and something in me is out of whack with my integrity or unscrupulous, or there's something to pinch off. And us coaches, we have to also be honorable with ourselves and with our clients, in that, I'm getting a hit here that this relationship is not uplifting anymore. And probably my best way of serving them is to pass them on to someone else, or to bow out and say, yeah, energetically, things have shifted, and that's okay. Maybe that's a good thing. Often I have clients want me to just stay the same. Like, oh, you're different, Glenn, than you were, a year ago or 6 months ago when we first started. I'm like, I'm going to keep changing. I'm going to keep evolving. I'm going to keep reading new books, go on new adventures, continue to challenge myself and grow. I'm not staying the same. And if you can be okay with that, you could be okay with that with yourself, just like I am that way with you. And hey, maybe that's not for everybody, because we're all at different paces and velocities. And so it's figuring out what jibes for yourself. And often, at least for me as a coach, because of wanting to be in highest service, I've not paid attention at times to and disregarded that inner, mechanism that's like, oh, this is as far as I got to take this person on this journey. Like, I don't get to take the whole journey, even though I can see it for them.
Yeah, and sometimes, I'll give you a real quick story here. A few years ago, I was contacted by a company. It was a privately held manufacturing company. The guy had lost a major contract. It was about a $10 million business. He had lost $4 million in business overnight, and he was struggling to recover that. And so I went in and met with the guy who was the president of the company. And we spent about 2 hours together going through things and talking about, well, how are you approaching things from your marketing and sales perspective? What kind of progress you're making? We got the salesman on the phone, and I was talking to him about what he was doing and his close rate and everything. And I was looking and saying, all right, with the other $6 million of business that you have here, what percentage of that are you making money with, and what percentage are you not making money with, and why is that the case? And we explored all these different things, and I began to get the picture in my head of what was going on, what I could do to help. But just the body language that I was getting from this guy, after a couple of hours of talking through all the logistics, I looked at him and said, okay, now it's your turn. And he said, what do you mean? I said, you need to convince me that I should be coming in here to work with you.
Right.
And he said, well, what do you mean? And I said, I'm not getting good vibes from your body language and stuff, because I sense that you're very closed in some respects. And I said, if I'm going to come into this company and spend 3 months of my life putting together a plan for moving this business forward and recouping the business and setting the path for growth for the future, just so that you can sit back and look at the plan and say, ho hum, I'm not interested, then do yourself a favor. Don't waste my time and don't waste your money. I got better things to do. And he looked at me and he was sort of shocked at first. And he looked at me and he said, you're right. He said, I'm not ready to make the kind of changes that this business needs in order to be able to solve the problems that I had. And I said, good. I'm glad that you've come to that realization. And I said, just don't wait too long to pull the trigger on making the changes that need to be made, because you're not too far from the point of no return. And we left on good terms and everything. He thanked me for my time, and about 6 months later, his business closed because of his inaction. But if I had gone in there, he would have spent a ton of money. I would have made money. I would have been fine from an economic point of view, but his business would not have moved forward, and I would have been crushed by putting the effort in and not seeing any results for it.
And that's so true. That as coaches, I know for you, for myself as well, results are so important. Results are like, well, why do you have me here? Okay, I'm here to help you do the work that you're clearly not doing yet, where you're stuck, where you're not feeling empowered, and an area of your life you want to transform. And I often tell people, I'm like, go spend the money on the patio furniture instead.
True.
Just go do something else, because you got to love the work we're going to do. So
right, exactly.
Gary, how would people get a hold of you if they wanted to grab a copy of your book, or
the best
to learn a little bit more about that?
Yeah, if they just go to my website, GaryLSmith.com, That has everything. It has links to my books. It has links to my YouTube channel, and there's some good blog articles there that they can read. They can sign up for a free exploratory session, no obligation at all. It's just sort of a get acquainted, get to know each other, see what I can do to help, and if we're a good fit. I'd love to hear from people, and I'm here to help however I can.
Love it. And you can download the free app where Gary will say, "You're absolutely right." And you can press that button all day long if you need to. Gary, I really appreciate you being here with myself and the audience. Hopefully some folks brought a pad of paper and a pen and got some great nuggets of wisdom. I took a ton of notes today. I just want to say thank you, brother, for who you are, how you show up in the world, and how you show up for not just your family, but for your clients. You give people an opportunity to really lean into their edges, knowing that they've got someone that's going to really show up without judgment. It's going to show up with curiosity, and be very transparent, about from your own personal experiences in a way that would be helpful for them to do their work, to work through what needs to get worked through way before there's some point of no return. It doesn't need to be like this. That doesn't need to be an option. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much, Glenn. I just love you, man. I love the time that we've been able to spend together. I love the wisdom that you share as well, and the heart that you have for serving others. So thanks very much for having me on today. It's been a real joy.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. Yeah, I love you too. And we'll talk to you guys soon. See you on the next episode. And we'll have you back for another one at some point here soon. Thanks good. Everybody for bearing with my COVID nasally voice today. Hopefully it hasn't been too bad, but thank you everyone. And we'll see you on the next episode.